Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to read My Hero Academia chapter 258, Friends. I was really confused as to what friends would refer to, but we got it in the chapter. Hey everybody, hi, welcome. This is quite the chapter. I found this a really good chapter. There's a lot of interesting little references to previous chapters too. I think this was another solid setup. Except this time, and instead of just setting up, we are acting onto some things. We're seeing like Hawks' thought process and all that. Overall, I think this was a exceedingly solid chapter, and I wanted to tell you why I believe that, because there's a lot of cool little things that the author did here, with other chapters as well. Anything that I have to say before we get into it? I just want to do the page by page walkthrough. Then we'll talk about the possibilities at the end, because in Hero Academia, we're always talking about the probabilities of what's going to happen and why things might happen, because we don't know what direction the author ultimately wants to go in, and we are still in that situation here. Even though we have heroes marching in on the streets, when you look at this chapter, like, well, me personally, I end up feeling like, maybe this is going to be very prolonged. I actually feel to some degree the heroes could get a small victory here, return to the city, and then we have something else happen. But there's just so many factors at play that, again, it makes it kind of hard to predict. So let's just get into it so that we can get to the end and talk about what I think might end up happening, or the probabilities that we have here. So we start with the first page, the cover. I really love this one because this is a reference to chapter 248. If you go back to chapter 248, you'll see that we had a page of Ochako and her team flying in the sky. So here we have Burning, Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo, and I do feel that that is a quick little reference to that page. A cool thing is, this page has more My Hero Academia related stuff in it in terms of the billboards. Like, it actually says My Hero Academia in it, and it says the author's name in the art itself. Ochako's page didn't have that. Another thing that I found really interesting is that Shoto is flying. That's interesting just because he's doing it with one side of his body. I don't know how that ends up working, in all honesty. He might be super jumping, but actually they might all be super jumping. Actually, no, because Izuku can legitimately fly now, so maybe Izuku isn't super jumping. He looks like he has full cowl on. It's really hard to tell. Okay, it is actually legitimately hard to tell how this is working out here. Regardless, the point is, this is a reference to 248. 248 didn't seem to have anything that could connect back here. And this is also reference to the final page of the chapter, where Burning is part of the group leading the kids into battle. So, interesting stuff. Let's keep on moving. We start the chapter off with a quick turning back the clock 2 months. This feels just about right for Horikoshi. Last week, I don't know if I said it during the video itself, but I might have suggested that we could be looking at how we got to this place, just because that seems like something that he would do, and that's what we got. He sets up that he has to turn back to fill us in on what actually happened. This lends to that bombastic nature of Hero Academia, of them setting things up, make it seem like it's a big deal, and then when you actually find out the story, it isn't that big of a deal. This isn't the case for that. I'm just saying that this is the style that lends to that general feeling. Because he has to set up and then go back, it does take away some of the oomph behind what was going down. But that's not a problem for us, because this is good for us. We wanted this information. So anyway, that first page was just that establishment shot of Twice and Hawks hanging out. Twice coming to Hawks, always asking for help. This is just a natural carry on from the last time that we saw Hawks and Twice, which was around chapter 255. We know that Hawks has been helping Twice out since that long ago. So this is just a natural progression this is just a natural progression from that. So what do we get out of here? Well, we get the timeline from that first page, and we also find out who's been busy and who's can't be bothered. Specifically, that Spinner and Compress have been have been in meetings, and given that those two are in the same group together, it actually makes sense that they end up being in meetings together. So that was a cool establishment shot, and we also got to see more characters in the background. As we are quickly finding out, background characters are going to be very important, so gotta keep an eye on all those characters. Last thing for that first page that was also nice was that Twice keeps calling Toga cute. Like, that's just nice. Anyway, we go into the second page. Now, the first half of that second page, when you read that little bit of Twice, honestly, that's there just to establish the relationship between, or just to further strengthen the relationship between Twice and Hawks, while also characterizing Twice. You have Hawks there giving a nice hearty laugh. I do feel that is a legitimately genuine laugh, right? Because especially when you go into the rest of the chapter and you see Hawks' feelings on the matter, you know, there is some level of sincerity within there. And then from there we go off into the exposition talk, where Hawks mentions that Sanctum is the longest serving member of the Liberation Army. And right there we have the information, the setup for how these guys are established, with the biggest detail being that Hawks remembers how all the people are organized. So really, this is just a very nice way. Like, this is just so streamlined. This is a nice way of the author telling us what the loadouts for the Liberation Army are. And of course, I appreciate it. I think this was a good move on the author's part. So then we go into that wonderful double spread of the Liberation Army members. And guys, we're going to be looking at the pictures because there's a lot of things going on here. First thing overall, what I want to say is that when it comes to all these people, they look way more designed than the mobs of people that we had during the Liberation Army versus Villain League War. So that what it tells you is that the author's putting effort into these designs. It's probably because a good portion of the designs are going to be popping up a lot more. Like, these are going to be people who have maybe 3 pages of content as opposed to the quick throwaway page of them getting wiped by the Villain League, right? So that's good to know. So let's go down the page. We got the first group, Twice's group. They are called Black. I also like that Twice has the best pose in this whole thing. It looks good, man. It looks good. But yeah, sorry. The Tactics Regiment. I wouldn't have thought of Twice as the tactician here, but I guess it's more because Twice can produce these people, and then these people can go. Maybe they have abilities that can actually change the course of a battlefield. Especially with this chapter establishing that Twice actually might be a legitimate dangerous force here. There's ways that you can justify him being the Tactics Regiment leader. Anyway, his people, they seem cool. The number 2 guy here honestly seems like a bit of a Nomu. So that's kind of scary. I'm very interested to see how worthwhile these characters are going to be. The number 3 looks like just a nice old lady kind of type character. So she's probably going to be a very creepy person. Given that these people are in the Tactics Regiment and in the Vanguard, that's scary, because that's saying that these people might, like I said before, these people have potential for destruction. These people might be able to change the course of a battle. But yeah, Twice's people look pretty okay. Then we move into Dobby's here. And this is just, it's interesting that there's so many people that look like Dobby, you know, kind of, you know, like people that look, yeah, like they look as rough as him, that they look like they've been like hanging out in back alleys for a little bit too long. It's quite interesting. Anyway, we're looking at his group, and number 1, we got a bald guy, and then another guy just looking off to the side. Number 2, we've got some people with gear, and number 3, we've got a rough looking guy with a regular looking guy. Actually, you know, like that third person, that person that has the mutant shaped head, honestly, they seem like they could be a throwaway design. And then we have Dobby and what was his name again? Urine? Apocrypha? Get in. There we go. I forget that name all the time. Yeah. So when you look at Dobby's panel there, it does seem like Violet is split into 2 groups, with Dobby specifically leading the rough-looking guys. So they were saying that they tried to match the regiments to the people's personalities. It's just funny that Dobby gets the rough-looking guys in general. Then we go into Carmine, Toga's group, Toga and Skeptic's group. So if you look here, again, they have the same kind of split as Dobby's group, where it's 2 people per panel. The first people in Toga's group, well, it looks like the one with the earrings is in Toga's. Yeah, they look normal. They look normal, but that kind of makes sense. This is the intelligence regiment. These are the spies. It makes sense that Toga's in here. Toga managed to get into Shiketsu, and Was that the name of the place? Yeah, I think it was. And managed to impersonate someone. She is very fitting for this whole thing, not even counting her quirk in. She's very fitting to be in the intelligence group. This is a scary group because these are the people that would be responsible for potentially thwarting what the heroes want to do. I mean, Skeptic has satellites in the sky. Is there anything saying that Skeptic isn't looking down at a giant congregation of heroes popping up from the south? Who knows, right? But this makes a lot of sense. Their designs here, we have that one guy that we've been seeing all the time. We have two more people in number 3 slot. Can't really tell them too well. Anyway, Skeptic and Toga together. Awesome. And then we move on to the support regiment headed by Mr. Compress and Spinner. I found it interesting that they're both in the support regiment. Mostly because it's just funny that the author is slotting those two together. Those two are the ones that got the least amount of development. Well, aside from Dobby, there were Mr. Compress got shafted pretty hard with the Villain League versus this fight because everyone else got that moment of character, whereas Mr. Compress is still an unknown quantity. So it's just interesting that those two were slotted together. But yeah, when we look at their grouping, number 1, they look pretty cool. The first person in there looks like a lady, right? Looks pretty cool. I like the design. I think that's pretty neat. I see that she has a mask with 6 holes in it. And I feel like I've seen that mask somewhere before. That mask looks really familiar, actually. Well, I can't place it. If you guys happen to know what it is, I thought for a second it might be Gang Orca's guys. But Gang Orca doesn't have those type of masks. Well, let me know if you guys recognize that. It might also be just like some leftover from a Nomu design. Maybe it's like I'm thinking of a Nomu. Anyway, we have them. That number 1 looking guy looks pretty rough, in all honesty. Number 2, we have I don't know, a bag on a head, and then we have a guy who honestly looks like he could be a main character. So if there's anyone that I would think would get a lot more panels than normal, probably him. I'm probably like looking at him. And then at number 3 we have another mutation looking person, and then we also have a person wearing a mask that kind of looks reminiscent of Compress. So that's again following that idea of they're matching people according to personality. So really interesting. So those were the looks of what we have in the chapter. But then actually looking at what was written in the chapter, what was written on the page, we know that these advisors are in charge of bases throughout the country. So again, we know that the Liberation Army has a ton of people, 50,000 or more, I believe. And it's cool to see their organizational structure here. I really just found this really interesting in general. Anyway, we do have that big dialogue box that goes on to say that these people are not just throwaways and that their abilities surpass those of the average hero. So that's pretty interesting, right? Because right there, when you're saying like these guys surpass the abilities of the average hero, you're saying that the Villain League would not just wipe them in one go. So I actually thought this was really clever because just a few moments ago I was saying, well, these designs look a lot more thought out. And here you have the reason. The author is specifically saying, yeah, they're thought out because they're actually worth a damn, right? They're actually not just peons. I think this was actually really good on the author to specifically write that in, that they didn't participate in the revival party at Deka City. I think that was so good because that explains why these really cool looking people weren't there. Again, I gotta respect that. He's covering his bases on that one. Oh, he's actually covering his bases. Oops. Anyway, love that whole page. I love that he gave us the structure. There's so many designs there. I hope that they will actually be used for 3 pages at least. Anyway, moving on to page 6 on Viz, we have Hawks talking, and he's pretty much setting us up with the thought, well, I need to be the one that makes the preemptive strike. Now, across page 6 and 7, we are illustrating exactly what it is that the Liberation Army currently wants, or what they think they want. And I'm saying what they think they want because I'm gonna rip into this in a few moments here. So one of the things that page 6 wants to do is that it wants to remind you that Hawks is a thoroughly bred hero. Reminding you that he has his interpersonal skills drilled into him from when he was young. So that was just explaining how he was able to get that information, and a reminder of just what kind of people the Hero Commission is when it comes to raising good property. Anyway, that page tells us that what Hawks found out was that the people in the group right now have animosity and resentment toward the current system. And then we have Hawks like tying it up by saying like individual freedom should reign supreme, and he's pretty much coaching that towards twice. So another thing that you have to appreciate there is just the narrative structure that the author used. He has this story or he has the little exchange between Twice and Hawks, with Hawks helping Twice be what tells us more about what it is that the Liberation Army wants. I think that was a really good narrative device in general to tell us a story. So anyway, we go into page 7, and we have just the extra detail that they want to bring down the status quo, and to bring down the status quo, it means taking out all the heroes. Now, the whole point can't really come together until we read page 7 and page 8, so we'll just go over there. We go to page 7, page 8, and we find out what it is that they plan to do, that being that they're going to attack all major cities at once throughout the nation. They quite certainly have the numbers. That is disastrous. That is scary. And from there, we escalate into total extremism with just pretty much the gist that Redestro wants to go out into society and wants to pretty much return things to the days of All for One. And Hawks even calls it the days of All for One. Now, we're halfway through the chapter, but this needs to be talked about. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that with Hawks saying the second coming of All for One, I want to point you back to chapter 257. Back in chapter 257, we had this imagery of the All for One era being shown to us through the flashbacks of Banjo and through All Might's narrative. And if you recall back then, I think I spoke about how this was valuable, how the author probably wants to show us what the world actually looked like during All for One's day, because he's probably going to invoke that element again. And here you have in this page, 258, where we are legitimately invoking the All for One era again. So what you end up having here is that you understand how the author sets things up. He set that element, he gave us that little background context of the information about All for One's day in the previous chapter to remind you that All for One's day was a legitimately bad time. Like, remember that one page of Banjo running on a building fighting? You look back down there and you see that there's just so much destruction. That was the era that All for One reigned in. And then you have these guys who want to bring back that era. But what I really want to hope from you guys is that you're not thinking that the Villain League is correct here. This whole idea about the virtues of self-defense being true freedom, this is a terrible society to live in. Let's just recall, this society that these guys are going for is not conducive to development of society. Remember, when the quirk phenomena first happened, we have it on record. Someone said that technological development stopped. What does that mean when technological development stops? It means that people don't have the resources to invent stuff. It means people don't have the resources to get creative. They're too caught up trying to survive. This isn't any kind of society anyone wants to live in. Look back at Banjo's day with everything destroyed, with everyone dying left, right, and center. These guys might be calling it like self-defense and true freedom. Learning isn't happening. Growth isn't happening. That's the mark of a failing society. No one should be pushing this. So what it comes back to is that the people in the Liberation Army, when you go back to what Hawks was saying about that page where they're saying that they have animosity and resentment towards the current system, I got a question. What is the current system? Oh, it's you can't use your superpowers just willy-nilly out in the public. And then the current system, otherwise you will be enforced upon by heroes who are allowed to use their powers. I understand like where this resentment is coming from the perspective of these people. But the laws are there for a reason. These people legitimately, each and every one of them has a power that could potentially be a weapon and can potentially ruin things. And I remember back when we were talking about this stuff, about the quirks back during the Liberation Army arc, I made a few points about just regulation in general. And there was a specific comment that said something about, that criticized me for regulating a biological aspect of someone. And then they brought up, your hands aren't regulated, and it's like, your hands are regulated. If you were to go out into society and punch someone, you could get charged for assault. Like, you are regulated. So the big thing that I really want to say here with people, like, they want freedom, they want to be able to use their quirks, I suppose. They don't want to be enforced upon. They're saying this, but they live in a comfortable society. That society will be taken away from them if the Liberation Party ever gets any power. It's going to be taken away from them. Like, think about kids living in this society. It's going to be absolute hell for them. When you have that one kid looking at the All Might statue, the author put that there specifically because he wants you to think about the kids here. He wants you to think about the families. He wants you to think about the innocents. No one wants to be caught up in a war zone. And that's what the Liberation Army is pushing. because we know that's what it's going to end up being, given that we've seen shots from the All for One era. Yeah, no, man. This isn't good. This isn't good in any which way. The people who think they want this, I am pretty sure if they ever saw what Shigaraki was capable of, actually quite a few of them did, but it was in their own city. I'm pretty sure, like, if they lived 5 years under the Shigaraki regime, they would not be into it at all. Anyway, those pages, aside from, you know, my little rant there, I think were really great. I think they were really great. And I really loved how the author set this up with reminding us of what All for One was, what that era was, and then having it tied up here. What I really want to show you guys is that the author does set things up in relatively quick succession. Like when he wants you to remember something, it's because it's going to come up again. So I want to kind of impart that on you. When you're looking through Hero Academia, if you ever spot a panel that seems weird, a panel that seems to give you a little bit too much information, think about how that panel could come back in the future. So when All Might was speaking about the All for One era, how could that come back in the future? Well, here you have it. The author made an element and then calls back to that element to give you extra context about what a particular group wants to establish. I do sincerely hope that we are all, however, agreed that no one wants to live in a war zone, even though this is what these people are pushing out right now. Again, society will fail if these guys get power, because we've already seen that society failed when this happened on the first time. Anyway, we move into page 10, and page 10 is just an interesting page because I never considered this. I never considered Twice actually cloning Nomus, and it's like, actually, yeah, on paper, yeah, that would be legitimately terrifying. Oh my god. So I love that Hawks gave us that little bit of information of this guy could legitimately be a bad person. But then I also loved what the author was doing with the friendship angle, with Hawks saying, I know that you're a good-natured guy. Now mind you, I still feel that Hawks is taking advantage of him because like that's who Hawks is. It would make more sense for Hawks to take advantage, but I do like that callback. Like Twice ultimately wants friends. When it comes to people who could be easily turned, at least, you know, back in the day, it would have been Twice or Spinner because they have positive values. It's just that they ended up with the wrong people. Anyway, I really like that that's the angle that the author went down because it makes sense for both characters. Any Hoosers, you have them talking a little bit. You have Hawks talking about how he lives in a birdcage. I do think there's an element to that. Like Hawks is pretty much the dog that the Hero Commission sticks on people. He does want to live in this freedom, and we do have that shot of Endeavor. So we know that Hawks legitimately does like Endeavor. We know this. We know that he legitimately respects Endeavor. He wanted to join the Endeavor that he idolized as a kid. So anyway, what he's saying to Twice here isn't a lie. We know that he wants to create a world where heroes can afford to just relax and not have to be always freaked out about the things going on there. So I do like that he was able to not really totally lie to Twice here. Anyway, I forgot one little narrative box, but Hawks mentions that the pieces are in place thanks to Twice. That was actually really interesting because that's not the first time that we've had that type of rhetoric from Hawks. Back in chapter 255, he's talked about how the pieces are in place. So that scene was also when he was talking to Twice. So that's pretty cool how he's talking about the pieces in place in chapter 255, and then he comes back to this chapter and they're saying like, well, those pieces that I mentioned were in place are in place thanks to Twice. I really like that. I thought that was a nice callback. Anyway, on page 12, we have Twice giving away some information, specifically that he's powering up in some mountain near Kyoto. Very interesting. Is that where the facility is? Who knows? I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool that we got the information. That narrows things down sort of. Well, but it's just like they say specifically a mountain. I wonder if it's a hospital, a mountain hospital, or if it's actually a facility. Like it's still kind of unclear. It does give us like an area, a locale to go to, specifically Kyoto. But yeah, interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I'm excited to see how Hawks uses that information. Anyway, finally, the whole Friendship Power Hour ends with Hawks saying that, you know, him and Twice could probably fight together, and him having that extra box of, and since I know you're good-natured, ... You know, I do feel that Hawks is a little bit conflicted here because Twice is legitimately a good-natured person. I feel like Hawks is setting up, because you're good-natured, I know I can take advantage of this. When he says when he hears Twice say let's fly free together, I do feel that to some degree Hawks legitimately feels for the situation. I do think he understands like there is like some unfortunate elements in this whole situation going down. Anyway, whew, been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talking. We go into page 14, and we have the transition to a little kid going to his first day of school. That's really nice. That just tells us that we're back in the current timeline. Also, like, the background is white, so you know that we're not in the flashback anymore. You know, the background, the space between the panels. Anyway, when you see this kid here, honestly, I think this is just the author reminding you, one, of the timeline, also reminding you of who's at stake here. It's the kids coming up in the future generations. We cannot let society fail here, because this is going to be absolute hell for people like this. And when you're looking back up at the All Might statue, it's reminding you of what All Might meant to the society. And then you also see that the kid's holding a plush of Endeavor, which is honestly really, really adorable. Good on the kid. That means he likes both of the heroes. Anyway, the kid looking back at All Might just it's a visual metaphor just to tell you that this is the society that All Might managed to create. A society where a kid could look forward to his first day of school. Anyway, we look at the giant panel of the heroes assembling. Now, what I've got to point out for this panel is that the UA professors are there. Previously, I thought that the UA's professors wouldn't be involved in this, but the Hero Commission seems to be going all out. And that's not all. There's a few interesting people in that grouping. When we start from the furthest part, we see that the firefighter hero that we saw back in first chapter, he's there too. So it's really good that he's going to be involved, but he's a design that we recognize. We know that the Pussycats are in there. That's pretty cool. We know that Ida's hero is there. So that's also really interesting because he's in Hosu. So that tells us that they got the heroes from all parts. They brought together a bunch of heroes from all around Japan. That's concerning. It's concerning that they're amassing all their forces in one spot. I really do hope that this goes without, well, you know, it goes off without a hitch, because otherwise we're in trouble here. Other heroes that are worthwhile to note, Lockrock, one of the two is there as well. We know his story, and right behind him is one of the heroes that participated in the Shizaki raid. So cool that the author put that little detail in there. There's also this hero next to Hosu. I recognize the design, but I don't remember where I recognize him from. Do you guys remember what chapter he was in? I know I've seen him before. I just don't remember. And then we also have the bunny hero. We have like some of the top 10 heroes there, and of course Endeavor leading the charge. We also have Gran Torino there, which is interesting because once Gran Torino gets in, like, it tells you Gran Torino isn't at Tartarus right now. Pretty interesting that he's there. Makes sense that he's there because he's going in to deal with people who are related to the Nomus. So we have quite the congregation of heroes. Then over on the next page, we have, well, how Izuku and the rest got roped into this. So this is also the surprising part, that the kids are going to be near enough to this whole situation. Now, one thing to note is that the kids all found out that they were going on this trip the day before. And the reason that that's important is because if there's a UA trader in Class 1A, that person just found out some big thing is happening in this area, which is interesting. Anyway, we find out how the kids found out about it, and then we find out that the kids are going to be trying to evacuate the city, and then we got the shot of the kids, and the kids are just as important. When you look at Izuku's corner, that group over there with Koda, Manga, and that one guy, that's the same grouping that they had for their internship part. So if you go back to chapter, there it is, 246, and you look specifically for Koda's group, you'll find him and Wash, and you'll find those other two with him. So that just reinforces that we are doing things in the groupings that we saw before. What that also tells us, however, is that when you look back at chapter 246, you have a pretty good indication of who's going to be involved with who. Specifically, you know that Shindo, I believe, the guy that can make earthquakes, he's going to be involved in it. And you know that the Shiketsu group is also going to be involved in it because they were in that 246 spread. So that's pretty cool. There are a few other people here that I don't recognize really, but that's fine. We also have Nejire there. We probably know Kirishima, Fat Gum, that group's going to be in there. So we have a good amount. Anyway, oh my god, this has been a long video. I hope I'll be able to edit it down. I got 35 minutes so far. Any hoosers, I'm coming back to this to actually talk about this now, guys. We are at this part where the kids are going to be evacuating the city. I am very surprised that the kids are involved in this in any way whatsoever. They don't really seem like your reserves. But now we got a question, what exactly is the plan here? What are we doing? Well, when you keep in mind that Hawk said that they need to make the first strike, they might be going in to attack specifically. They might be going in to curb the army right now. Like they're sending all the heroes towards that main area where all the people are congregating just to take them out. That makes the most sense to me. It's going to be an open battlefield. I think that they're in the area of the army headquarters. I don't think they're in the area of Kyoto, because Kyoto, if I recall, every time like anime does Kyoto, they always pump up the cultural aspect of it and just how traditional it looks, and I don't see that here, so I don't think this is Kyoto. It's a good thing that we got that hint that Shigaraki is off in a mountain somewhere, because it does help us limit what we're looking at here. Now what I'm thinking is, like, I like what I'm seeing here because it makes me feel that we could be going into a plotline that specifically weakens the Liberation Army. When you look at this and then you look back at chapter 257 and you look at that the dialogue, the day that heroes vanished from the city, I really feel like now looking at this, what I'm thinking is the day that heroes vanished from the city is legitimately one day where heroes weren't around because they were off doing this particular thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all heroes just were wiped out that day. It just means like the blip, the one day that heroes went off to do something. The one thing that I gotta say is concerning me is that we have a lot of active plot lines still up in the air. For instance, Aizawa and Present Mike, they're in that group of the heroes. We know how they feel about the Nomus. Gran Torino is there. Is there going to be a conclusion or some follow-up on the Nomu plot? Are Nomus going to show up? Pretty scary. Is it possible that the villains know that the heroes are coming? Did it leak? We know that there's a leak somewhere. Did it leak? Like maybe the villains have broken off and they're going to go do a three-pronged assault. While everything is undefended, maybe we have a villain group going and taking out UA. Maybe we have a villain group going towards Tartarus because everything's undefended, or more or less undefended. You know, could that be possible? Yeah, it could be possible. We have the Eddie plotline. Eddie's horn is primed. Is that going to go off? Maybe. Where it's a very scary situation. My ideal scenario would be the kids go in, they do the assault. It's not the perfect victory, but it's good enough. They take out a good amount of numbers. They go back to UA. They hang out there. And then Shigaraki's villains do a counterattack in revenge for attacking them first. And then they take out UA and the prison. That would be my ideal scenario because I think that would work really well. But we very well could go into the three-pronged assault. This very well could be the moment we find out about stuff. This very well could be the moment also the kids watch the other heroes get absolutely wrecked. Anyway, the most important thing is that Hawk said they need to strike first before the villains strike them. That makes me feel like Hawks is doing this before Shigaraki is fully ready. Now, there's a possibility Shigaraki might just show up here towards the end and just absolutely wreck house. Who knows, right? We'll have to see. But yeah, we end off this chapter. The kids are going to be watching. I don't think it is a great move for the Hero Commission to put their reserves so close to the action, because this is just pretty much setting up the kids to watch a gigantic event. But right now, if I was to say like where my probabilities are at, I feel like it's a really good chance that the kids leave this situation having seen it. That the day that the heroes vanish refers only to this one specific instance, and then they come back. And then we go into a villain counterattack. We'll have to see. Again, there's a lot of plot lines still in the air. Like the Best Genius, Bakugo, Hawks plot line. Like I said earlier, the Eddie plot line. A lot of stuff. One thing for sure though, if UA ends up getting attacked, Mirio is probably there with Eddie, and that's probably going to be the moment that Mirio gets his power back. But yeah, man, super exciting. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it there. It's a pretty long video. Sorry if there were any abrupt cuts. I was having a lot of trouble formulating my thoughts. I think this was a really good chapter. I'm excited to see where we're going. What do you guys think? Do you guys think we're at Kyoto? I'm looking at images of Kyoto right now, and it doesn't seem like we are. I'm not too sure. I'm not great with Japanese geography. I really do think they're just right outside the area where the main gathering spot is. But you guys let me know. Do you guys think that the villains already know that the heroes are amassing? I mean, they have satellites in the sky. It'd be weird if they didn't see this. How secretive did they keep this? Did Hawks do a good enough job of finding all the heroes in the group? Maybe. This is all going to rely on if we see the villains get freaked out. If the villains don't get freaked out, we know this is going to be a horrid time. But yeah, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Let me know what you're hoping for the future of Hero Academia. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.